And I can stop feeling right.
My ears are ringing. And if you were alive in 1994, yours were too. 1994 was the year pop music stopped being about vibes and turned into an Olympic sport. The grunge era was happening over on MTV with Nirvana and Pearl Jam. But on Top 40 radio, it was a vocal arms race. If you couldn't hit a high E with perfect clarity and hold it for 15 seconds, you didn't matter. Welcome back to The Main Pop Girl, the series where I crown the dominant female artist every year from 1990 to now. It's 1994 and we are deep in the vocal diva era. This was a four-way cage match between the biggest voices on the planet. But when you look at the data from 1994, one artist wasn't just competing, she was operating in an entirely different stratosphere. Let's break it down. To understand the landscape of 1994, you first have to look at who was playing defense. After the nuclear fallout of 1992's erotica era, Madonna spent 1993 on a high-stakes apology tour, and she entered 1994 with her public image in tatters. And even then, it started rough. In March, she appeared on The Late Show with David Letterman. It was supposed to be a standard promo slot, but it turned into the most censored talk show segment in television history. She cursed 14 times, handed Letterman her underwear, and refused to leave the stage. The press eviscerated her. They said she was over again. They said she was desperate. She needed a hard reset. She needed to prove to radio that she could still make hits without the shock tactics. And surprisingly, or not, depending on which camp you fall in, she pulled it off. Her savior was a song called I'll Remember from the soundtrack to the movie With Honors. It was lush, it was safe, and crucially, it was a massive hit. It climbed all the way to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and spent 26 weeks on the chart. It finished as the number 13 song of the year, higher than hits by Snoop Dogg or Elton John. By the time she released the Bedtime Stories album in October, the narrative had shifted. She'd survived the backlash. But make no mistake, in 1994, Madonna was reacting to the culture, not driving it. And while the vocal trinity was dominating the charts in 1994, the seeds for the next big shift were already being planted. Quick heads up, we're doing this for every single year from 1990 to 2025. So if you want to be there when we finally get to Britney, Gaga, or Taylor, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell right now. You do not want to miss the episode for your favorite year of pop. Now, before we get to the vocal heavyweights, I have to ask a question that might get me cancelled. 1994, we had the technicians, Celine, the stylists, Madonna, and the naturals, Mariah and Whitney. Pause the video right now and comment below. Does technical perfection matter more than vibe when it comes to vocals for you? Because the charts in 1994 gave us a very clear answer, and a lot of you aren't going to like it. If Madonna was quieter, Celine Dion was getting louder, much louder. 1994 was the year Celine went from a promising singer to a global event. Her cover of The Power of Love was an absolute monster. It spent 4 weeks at number 1 on the Hot 100, her first chart topper in the US, and finished as the number 4 song of the entire year. We have to talk about the vocal here. That final note, she holds it for a sustained 8 seconds before hitting the ad-libs. It was the definition of the mid-90s power ballad aesthetic. Her album, The Color of My Love, was a steady multi-platinum seller throughout the year, eventually finishing as the 16th biggest album of 1994. And she capped it all off with a wedding to Renee Angelil that was broadcast live in Canada. It wasn't just a ceremony, it was effectively a royal coronation. Celine had the sheer volume, and she had the global reach, but there was another artist who was about to undercut all that noise with pure, unfiltered cool. While everyone else was racing to the top of the whistle register, Toni Braxton was dominating the charts by going low. If you weren't there in 1994, it's hard to explain just how inescapable Toni Braxton was. She was the it girl. In a sea of big hair and sequins, she had the iconic short cut, the Toni Braxton look that women across America took to their salons immediately. She offered a sound that bridged the gap between sophisticated adult R&B and massive pop radio. Her self-titled debut album had been released in late 93, but it truly caught fire in 94. In February, the album hit #1 on the Billboard 200. It was a sales juggernaut that refused to die, spending the entire year on the charts and eventually selling over 8 million copies in the US alone. It finished as the #7 best-selling album of 1994. And the hits just kept coming. Breathe Again was a massive crossover smash. It peaked at #3 on the Hot 100, but its staying power was legendary. It lived in the top 10 for weeks and finished as the #7 song on the year-end chart. And then came awards season. The industry didn't just like Toni, they anointed her. At the Grammys in March 94, she walked away with Best New Artist and Best Female R&B Vocal Performance. Toni Braxton had the critical acclaim. She had the cool factor that the other divas lacked, and she had a #1 album that defined the sound of the year. In any normal year, Toni Braxton walks away with this title easily. But 1994 wasn't a normal year. Let's play a game. I want to play a game. I'm going to show you the raw sales data from the first half of 1994. Artist A is dominating R&B and has a #1 album. Artist B has the biggest single but lower album sales. Artist C is doing this. You might think Artist C is Madonna. You might think it's Whitney. You'd be wrong. That massive bar? That's what we call an Imperial phase. And just a quick aside, digging up these 30-year-old sales charts and producing these videos takes a massive amount of time and research. If you want to support the channel, consider becoming a channel member. Click join or the link in the description below. Thanks in advance, and let's get back to it. Toni had the vibe, Celine had the volume, but Mariah Carey, in 1994, Mariah Carey had the empire. We talk a lot about Imperial phases in pop music, that rare window when an artist is so dominant that gravity doesn't seem to apply to them. 1994 was the absolute peak of Mariah's first Imperial phase. Her album Music Box was released in 1993 and was a commercial machine. Throughout 1994, it just kept selling and selling and selling. It spent the entire year in the upper echelons of the charts. It was powered by Hero, which finished as the #5 song of the year. But it was also powered by her cover of Without You. While it peaked at #3 in the US, Without You was the song that truly unlocked the globe for Mariah. It became her first ever #1 single in the UK and dominated charts across Europe. By the end of 1994, Music Box was the second biggest selling album of the year in America. The sheer velocity of her sales utterly dwarfed everyone else in the vocal trinity. But the real reason Mariah owns 94 isn't just about the sales. It's about the audacious gamble she took in November. At the absolute height of her powers, young, kinda cool, and dominating pop radio, Mariah Carey decided to release a Christmas album. In 1994, this was considered career suicide. Christmas albums were for washed-up artists. Mariah didn't care. She dropped Merry Christmas on November 1st. The lead single, All I Want for Christmas Is You, wasn't a hit. It was ineligible for charting on the Billboard at the time, but it drove the album to sell nearly 2 million copies in the final 6 weeks of the year alone. She didn't just dominate summer with Music Box, she snatched December away from every other artist forever. It was a flex of unprecedented proportions. So who is our 1994 main pop girl? Here's the verdict. Honorable mention, Toni Braxton. If Mariah hadn't existed, 1994 would belong to Toni. She was cool, critical, and commercial. And my runner-up is Celine Dion. The power of her voice was undeniable. But the main pop girl of 1994 is Mariah Carey. She had the sales, she had the radio dominance, she launched her touring career, and she invented the modern pop Christmas standard. In the 1994 Vocal Olympics, everyone else was just competing for silver. Mariah took the gold, and she didn't even break a sweat. But here's the brutal truth about pop history. Perfection is boring, and while Mariah was celebrating, a young Canadian angry at an ex-boyfriend was writing a jagged little song that was about to kill the vocal diva era permanently. If you want to see how Alanis Morissette destroyed this entire hierarchy in 12 months, you need to hit subscribe so YouTube knows you want to see it, because 1995 is a bloodbath. See you next time.